From airports built on artificial islands to those nestled between mountains or featuring breathtaking rooftop gardens, each one is a getaway to the region it serves. Today, we're counting down 15 of the most unique airports in the world, starting with number 15, the Kansai International Airport in Japan. Land is a scarce resource in Japan, so engineers headed roughly 3 miles offshore into Osaka Bay to build this structure. Work on the man-made island started in 1987, and by 94, jumbo jets were touching down. Travelers can get from the airport to the main island of Honshu via car, railroad, or even high-speed ferry. Kansai's artificial island is about 2.5 miles long and about 1.6 miles wide. Earthquakes, dangerous cyclones, an unstable seabed, and sabotage attempts from protesters are just some of the variables engineers had to contend with. As impressive as the airport is, concerns have been raised that climate change and rising sea levels do pose a very real threat to its existence. In other words, when this was built, engineers probably didn't account for global warming, so in about 50 years or so, this airport might just be underwater. The city's original international airport, Itami Airport, was surrounded by buildings. It couldn't be expanded, and many of its neighbors had filed complaints because of noise pollution. A new airport was part of a number of new developments to revitalize Osaka, which had been losing economic and cultural ground to Tokyo for most of the century. It consists of 2 terminals, Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. Terminal 1 is designed by Italian architect Renzo Piano, and it's the longest airport terminal in the world. It also serves as an international hub for All Nippon Airways, Japan Airlines, and Nippon Cargo Airlines, and it also serves as a hub for Peach, the first international low-cost carrier in Japan. In 2020, Kansai received Skytrax awards for Best Airport Staff in Asia, World's Best Airport Staff, and World's Best Airport Baggage Delivery. Number 14, Gibraltar Airport. Gibraltar International Airport, previously known as North Front Airport, is the civilian airport that serves the British Overseas Territory of Gibraltar. The runway and aerodrome is owned by the Ministry of Defense and operated by the Royal Air Force as RAF Gibraltar. National Air Traffic Services holds the contract for the provision of air navigation services at the airport. So what makes it so unique? Well, Winston Churchill Avenue, the main road heading towards the land border with Spain, intersects the airport runway. And consequently, it has to be closed every time an aircraft needs to land or depart. The short runway also abruptly ends at the sea on both ends, forcing pilots to hit the brakes. So that's not too great. The History Channel program Most Extreme Airports ranked this airport the 5th most extreme airport in the world. It's exposed to strong crosswinds around the Rock and across the Bay of Gibraltar, and the runway featured in a BBC Top Gear special and was also used by Jaguar to launch of a new range. A custom-painted Boeing 737 was used in conjunction with a fleet of cars. The airport appeared on Channel 5's series Gibraltar, Britain in the Sun, which was broadcast from June to July 2013. The airstrip and the Four Corners border crossing feature at the end of Carol Reed's 1963 production of The Running Man, and several takes were shot as Remick and Harvey chase each other, firstly through the border and later as the light aircraft took off from the eastern end of the runway, narrowly missing an RAF Halifax aircraft, which was supposed to be taking off too. Number 13, Madeira International Airport, Portugal. Engineers had to build a platform to expand this runway, where the landing strip is located between steep cliffs and the ocean. They built a series of platforms on an artificial island extending from the current runway. Over 180 columns hold up the runway, which have to withstand serious shock and loading during landings. Madeira Airport, officially Cristiano Ronaldo International Airport, is an international airport in the civil parish of Santa Cruz in the Portuguese archipelago, an autonomous region of Madeira. It mostly hosts flights to European metropolitan destinations due to the importance as a leisure destination, and it's pivotal to the movement of cargo in the area. During its renaming ceremony in 2017, however, the airport drew media notoriety for an infamous bust of Ronaldo unveiled at the ceremony, now replaced as let's just say it wasn't a great likeness. As already mentioned, the airport's considered one of the most peculiarly perilous airports in the world due to its location. However, it did also receive the Outstanding Structure Award in 2004 by the International Association for Bridge and Structural Engineers. The airport involves coordinated efforts in spotting landmarks on approach since there's no instrument landing, and the airport's also dangerous due to strong winds, high mountains on one side and the ocean on the other. Number 12, Don Mueang International Airport, Thailand. From a distance, Don Mueang International Airport looks like any other midsize airport. However, smack dab in the middle of 2 runways is an 18-hole golf course. One of the major problems is that the only taxiways were located at the end of the runways, but when recommendations were made that they build an additional taxiway in the middle from side to side, the response from those in charge was, "Absolutely not, that is going to take out our green and our one fairway." Well, the airport and the course were originally an all-military operation and have since opened up to commercial traffic. Security threats, however, have limited the public's access to the greens, and the airport's considered to be one of the world's oldest international airports and one of Asia's oldest operating airports. It was officially opened as a Royal Thai Air Force base on the 27th of March 1914, although it had been in use earlier. Commercial flights began in 1924. The airport's also featured an exterior walkway connected to the Amari Hotel. The first commercial flight was an arrival by KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. In September 2006, the airport was closed and replaced by the newly opened Suvarnabhumi Airport before reopening on the 24th of March 2007. In 2015, it became the world's largest low-cost carrier airport, and it still maintains its position as the second busiest airport in the country. Number 11. Ice Runway, Antarctica. Well, you can see why this airport, or airstrip, made this list. Williams Field, otherwise known as the Ice Runway, is a United States Antarctic Program airfield in Antarctica. Williams Field consists of 2 snow runways located on approximately 25 feet of compacted snow, lying on top of 8 to 10 feet of ice, floating over 1,800 feet of water. Well, the airport, which is approximately 7 miles from Ross Island, serves McMurdo Station and New Zealand's Scott Base. Until the 2009-10 summer season, Williams was the major airfield on the continent for aircraft operations. Now, Williams Field is named in honor of Richard T. Williams, a United States Navy equipment operator who drowned when his D-8 tractor broke through the ice on January 6, 1956. Williams and other personnel were participants in the first Operation Deep Freeze, a U.S. military mission to build a permanent science research station at McMurdo. The extraordinary conditions encountered at Williams Field include the fact that the airfield is in a continuous slow slide towards the sea. Seaward movement of the floating McMurdo ice shelf upon which the airfield is constructed has forced Williams Field to be relocated 3 times since its original construction. In 1956, a Douglas C-124C Globemaster II of the United States Air Force was damaged beyond repair when the nose gear failed on landing. All 17 occupants survived, and the plane's parts were used to fix 2 other Globemasters damaged in accidents at McMurdo earlier that year. In 1957, a Douglas R-4D-6L of the U.S. Navy crashed on takeoff due to water freezing in the fuel lines. There weren't any fatalities, and the plane was written off. And in 1971, a Lockheed LC-130F Hercules of the Navy crashed on takeoff in poor visibility when the left main ski hit a 5.5-foot snowbank and the right wing hit the ground and broke between the engines. There were no fatalities, and the plane was taking part in Operation Deep Freeze. Number 10. Congonhas Airport, Brazil. While having an airport only 5 miles from the city center may be a convenience for commuters, it does place a strain on both pilots and air traffic control. It becomes a bit of a challenge in terms of safety just to get the plane in there, not to mention the noise restrictions and the terribly awkward arrival and departure routes that also need to minimize your nose print. In other words, it becomes quite challenging for pilots. Fortunately, Sao Paulo's many high-rise buildings are far enough away from the airport that they aren't an immediate obstacle. But it's those very restrictions that make it, well, a bit unique. Congonhas Airport is one of the 4 commercial airports serving Sao Paulo in Brazil. But as I mentioned, it's got slot restrictions operating with a maximum of 30 operations per hour, being one of the 5 airports with such restrictions in Brazil. Even so, in 2019 it was the second busiest airport in Brazil by passenger traffic. The central hall of the passenger terminal is considered one of the most outstanding examples of modern architecture in Sao Paulo. However, modernizing and enlargement work has been conducted at the terminal from 2003 onwards, while trying to preserve the look of the older, historic section. The airport has been troubled by slippery runways and has had several accidents where water accumulation has been a significant factor, the most notable one being the TAM Airlines Flight 3054 in 2007. June 2007, its rainwater drainage grooves were only finished in September of 2007, and as a consequence of this accident and its subsequent public outcry, the airport's operations were significantly altered, and in 2008, Congonhas lost its designation as an international airport. Number 9. Courchevel International Airport in France. So what makes this one unique? Well, how about the large hill towards the middle of the runway? In fact, I'll just quote one of the pilots who has landed there on a regular basis, quote, "You take off downhill and you land going uphill," he said. Adding that the hill has an 18.5% grade, it's so steep that small planes could probably gain enough momentum rolling down it with no engines to safely glide off. The airfield is a very short runway of only 1,762 feet with a gradient of 18.5%. There's no go-around procedure for landings here. The airfield is primarily used by small fixed-wing aircraft such as the Cessna 208 Caravan, as well as a few helicopters, as the runway has no instrument approach procedure or lighting aids, making landing a pretty difficult thing in low fog or clouds. The History Channel show Most Extreme Airports ranks it as the 7th most extreme airport in the world. It's also featured in films including the James Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies. In 2016, a Eurocopter EC-120 Colibri FGVTA lost control on the final approach at 10 meters. The helicopter struck the ground and landed on its right side, causing the total loss of the aircraft. In 2017, an EAPC Pilatus PC-12 crashed on landing, following the pilot carrying out the final 5% lower than the glide slope. In 2019, Blue Wing's Piper PA-46 crashed into a wall of snow after the pilot throttled back too late on landing. There were 2 minor injuries recorded, and in 2019, a Cessna P210 crashed due to landing before the runway threshold. So yeah, a pretty dangerous airport to land at. Number 8. Princess Juliana International Airport, Saint Martin. Nothing says fun in the sun like roaring engines and the smell of jet exhaust. Well, not many airports are flanked by oceanfront property filled with tourists standing under incoming aircrafts. Princess Juliana International Airport is the main airport on the Caribbean island of Saint Martin. The airport's located on the Dutch side of the island, close to the shore of Simpson Bay Lagoon. In 2015, the airport handled over 1.8 million passengers and around 60,000 aircraft movements. The airport serves a hub for Winair and is the major gateway for the smaller Leeward Islands. So what makes it unique? Well, as I've already mentioned, the airport has a very low-altitude flyover landing procedure because on one end of its runway it's extremely close to the shore and Maho Beach. In other words, planes appear to be coming into land just feet above the heads of the public. The proximity of Maho Beach to the runway has made the airport one of the world's favorite places among plane spotters, despite the dangers. But in 2017, a New Zealand woman did die from injuries sustained by jet blast from a departing aircraft, and tourists have often been criticized for their dangerous behavior on the beach. In 1972, a de Havilland Canada Twin Otter operated by Air Guadeloupe on behalf of Air France crashed at night into the ocean near Saint Martin. En route from Guadeloupe, all 11 passengers on board, including both pilots, died. In 2014, Skyway Enterprises Flight 7101, a Shorts SD-360 on behalf of FedEx, was climbing out of St. Martin's runway 28 when the aircraft lost height and impacted the water about 2 nautical miles off the coast. Both pilots died, and in 2017, a tourist was severely injured holding an airport fence when jet blast from a plane taking off resulted in her losing grip from the fence. She was transported to hospital where she later died. Moving on to number 7, Svalbard Airport, Svalbard, Norway. This 8,000-foot runway is built directly on ice, and under the runway are culverts allowing water to run from the mountain. Is that unique enough for you? Due to the lack of runway lights, flights are not only permitted during daylight, thus hindering flights during the winter months when the sun never rises. The airports needed to be built on permafrost, with the runway insulated against the ground so it won't melt during the summer. Svalbard Airport is the main one serving in Svalbard, Norway. It's about 3.1 miles northwest of Longyearbyen on the west coast, and is the northernmost airport in the world with scheduled public flights. In 1959, it was first used for occasional flights, but could only be used a few months a year. Construction of the new airport started in 1973, and the airport was opened on the 2nd of September 1975. And by 2014, the airport handled over 154,000 passengers. Scandinavian Airlines operates daily flights, and Lufttransport provides services to the other 2 airports on Svalbard. There are also regular charter flights, and that said, as with many other entries on this list, the airport has seen a few accidents in its time. In 1986, a Cessna 185 crashed immediately after leaving Svalbard Airport en route to Nyaslund, killing all 6 on board. And in 1996, Nukovo Airlines Flight 2801 from the airport in Moscow crashed into a mountain about 14 kilometers from the airport. All 141 people on board died, making it the worst air crash in Norwegian history. Number 6. Juancho E. Yoraskin Airport in Sabah. Alright, next on the list is the airport with the shortest commercial runway in the world at a tiny 1,312 feet long, flanked on one side by high hills with cliffs that drop off into the sea at both ends. The airport is closed to jet traffic, but regional airline propeller aircraft are able to land there under waivers from the Netherlands Antilles Civil Aviation Authority. The most common aircraft to land here are the STAL, Short Takeoff and Landing Capable de Havilland Canada DHC-6 Twin Otter, and Britten-Norman BN-2 Islanders. Jet aircraft are unable to land here because the runway is way too short. A small ramp and terminal are on the southwest flank of the runway, and the ramp also has a designated helipad. The tower is an advisory service only and doesn't provide air traffic control. Aviation fuel is not available on the island of Sabah, and the only airline currently providing scheduled services is locally owned by Winair, which operates daily flights to St. Martin aboard the DH-6 Twin Otter. Only well-trained pilots are allowed to fly in the area. The approach is almost at a cliff alongside a jagged terrain, and then a sharp bank left before an immediate landing. The idea of building an airport here is credited to Remy Dehaenen, who brought the idea to the Sabah Economic Council along with a contractor named Jacques Delaverre. Dehaenen had previously made several landings of a Vought Sikorsky OS-2U seaplane off Fort Bay Harbor as early as 1946. After surveying the island by air, Dehaenen suggested then privately owned Flat Point as the site for the airport. The land was cleared and graded in only a couple of weeks, and Dehaenen made the first landing on an aircraft on the island of Sabah on February 9, 1959, with nearly the entire population of the island in attendance. Number 5. Copialas State Airport, Washington. Airports really don't come more unique than this one, especially when you consider that one way to get to Washington's Griffith Pryday Ocean State Park is to land on this 4,500-foot-long strip of beach. The airstrip's located on an ocean beach near the mouth of the Copialas River in the North Beach Conservation Area, adjacent to the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. It's the only airport in Washington state where landing on the beach is legal. The runway is between the mouth of the river and a barrier of rocks with orange reflective markers at both ends. The Department of Transportation also notes that pilots should aim for dark, wet sand, which is more stable to land on than light-colored soft sand. As with other beach-based landing areas, Copialas State Airport is submerged every time the tide rolls in. Pilots considering spending some time on the beach should make sure to park their aircraft high above the tide mark in order to ensure that their planes aren't taken out to sea. It's got a one runway that's designated 1432, with a sand surface measuring about 4,500 feet by 150 feet wide. The runway is only available during low tide, and due to river migration and beach erosion, the runway length has been reduced by approximately 1,100 feet. For the 12-month period ending in May of 2011, the airport had 200 general aviation aircraft operations and an average of about 16 per month. Number 4. Barra Airport, Scotland. There are runways that are difficult to see in bad weather conditions, and then there are runways like this one, ones that completely disappear whenever there's a high tide. This airport's located on a Scottish beach in the shallow bay on a remote island, so pilots flying to the airport have to worry about severe weather conditions in addition to the rising tides. Barra Airport is a short runway airport, or stall port, situated in the wide shallow bay of Tray Moor at the northern tip of the island of Barra in the Outer Hebrides. Once again, the airport is unique, and it's believed to be the only one in the world where scheduled flights use a tidal beach as the runway. It opened in 1936, and the airport's only destination is Glasgow. The beach is also popular with visitors and cockle pickers who are asked to observe the windsock to see if the airport's in operation. In 2011, Barra Airport was voted number 1 in the world's top airport approaches by a poll conducted by PrivateFly.com, up from 10th place in 2010. The beach is set out with 3 runways and a triangle marked by permanent wooden poles at their ends in directions 725, 1129, and 1533. This almost always allows the DHC Twin Otter aircraft that serve the airport to land into the wind. Barra Airport also has a Civil Aviation Authority ordinary license that allows flights for the public transport of passengers or for flying instruction as authorized by the license, Highland and Islands Airport Limited. Number 3. Hong Kong International Airport. Now, what makes Hong Kong International Airport stand out from the other island-based airports is the fact that there's a luxury golf course and a massive expo center within walking distance from the runway. Yeah, that's right, it's another airport with a golf course. It almost seems like the people who plan these things actually know what they're doing. And they kinda do. You see, the airport's consistently ranking as one of the busiest cargo hubs in the world. 3.5 million metric tons of cargo passed through it in 2009. So amenities like Sky 9 City Eagle Golf Course cater to the constant stream of professionals passing through. A quick round of 9 holes cost about $60. Opened in 1998, the airport's the world's busiest cargo gateway and one of the world's busiest passenger airports. It's also home to one of the world's largest passenger terminal buildings. It runs 24 hours a day, and it's the primary hub for Cathay Pacific, Greater Bay Airlines, Hong Kong Airlines, HK Express, and Air Hong Kong. More than 100 airlines operate flights from the airport to over 180 cities across the world. In 2015, HKIA handled over 68.5 million passengers, making it the 8th busiest in the world by passenger traffic and the 4th busiest by international passenger traffic. Since 2010, it's also surpassed Memphis International Airport, becoming the world's busiest airport by cargo traffic, except in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic-related disruptions. Number 2. Tocantin Airport, Honduras. Tocantin Airport is a civil and military airport located about 4 miles from the center of Tegucigalpa, Honduras. The approach to the airport is considered to be one of the most difficult in the world to all aircraft, especially in inclement weather. This airport's received much notoriety due to the proximity to mountainous terrain, its short runway, and its historically difficult approach to runway 2. For years, efforts were made to replace it with Sotocano Air Base in Comayagua, which didn't occur until 2021 when Comayagua International Airport opened there. In the meantime, it was significantly improved by the work of Inter Airports, a company contracted by the Honduran government. The airport has a single asphalt runway situated at an elevation of over 3,200 feet. Until May 2009, the runway was only about 6,100 feet in length. In 2007, the approach to runway 2 was made significantly easier by work that systematically bulldozed a large portion of the hillside. Following this work, in May of 2009, the southern end of the runway received a 984-foot extension, lengthening it to 7,096 feet. Boeing 737-200s operated by seasonal charter airline Aviesta are the largest aircraft that normally land here. Its runway is still significantly shorter than most of other international airports, and it's so short in fact that many aircraft seen by plane spotters are said to be touching down on the displaced threshold of the runway. Historically, larger aircraft have occasionally landed here, such as Douglas DC-8s on a mission with Orbis International in 1987, a C-17 Globemaster in 2008, 9, and 11, and Boeing 757s operated by American, which is in 2015 replaced them with Airbus A319s. In the early 80s and 90s, Sasha operated Boeing 727s and 37s from its hub at Tocantin. Number 1. Dammam King Fahd International Airport, Saudi Arabia. Not many airports have a mosque large enough to take in thousands of people, but there are many things which make this place unique, not least of which is the Royal Terminal, which is reserved for the royal family of Saudi Arabia, government personnel, and official guests. It covers an area of 177,000 square feet and has 4 bridges linking the terminal to the aircraft. Sadly, however, despite its specialized purpose, the terminal is rarely used by the royal family, who generally prefer to utilize a similar special terminal at King Abdulaziz Air Base. The airport mosque was built on the roof of the car park and in the middle of a landscaped area of over 500,000 square feet. The mosque can accommodate up to 2,000 worshippers, and access to it can be easily gained from the passenger terminal. The airport also has its own plant nursery with a total area of over 2.3 million square feet, which encompasses 3 greenhouses and over 400,000 square feet of green fields. The nursery supplies the airport gardens and planted areas with trees and plants. In addition to this, the control tower stands 281 feet, and this height allows visibility over all operational parts of the airport. The airport's named for King Fahd, 1982 to 2005, under whose reign it was constructed and inaugurated. The design of the airport really began in 1976, with construction beginning in '83, and the basic infrastructure of the airport was complete by the end of 1990, which allowed the U.S.-led coalition forces to use the airport during the Gulf War in early '91 for the storage of military aircraft, including over 140 A-10 Thunderbolt IIs, among other aircraft, such as the AH-64 Apaches, CH-47 Chinooks of the 101st Airborne Division. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.